This is Purity for Life segments. Select interviews from the Pure Life Ministries weekly audio magazine, Purity for Life. Hello, I'm Mike Johnston. Thanks for joining us. To subscribe to the full weekly podcast, visit our website at purelifeministries.org. Just click on the podcast tab under free resources. We're glad you're here. Stay with us. Jeff Colón has joined me in the studio. Jeff, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be with you.
And it's good to see you as always. Jeff, we want to talk today about an issue that I know is difficult for some people to hear about, but is increasingly a problem, and that is the issue of dealing with children who have been molested. How much of a problem is that today?
I can tell you countless stories, heartbreaking stories, over the devastation that sin causes. But when we're talking about a child that has been molested, we're talking about devastation that really goes deep and really takes its toll on a child. And a counselor really has to be in touch with the Lord to help this child deal with the consequences of such a sin.
Well, I have to imagine, Jeff, that not only do the issues go deep, but these issues that they're dealing with, I suspect, can go on for years. Maybe have been going on for years. As a counselor, how do you begin to deal with those kinds of issues?
Well, I just want to say this, Mike. In dealing with children, when a counselor comes across a situation where a child is being abused, the first thing you want to do is to stop the abuse. Research studies have shown that 60% of children that are abused are re-abused. So it's very important to take quick action so that the abuse ceases and that it cannot happen again.
Jeff, we of course recognize as counselors that there are legal requirements. If you become aware of molestation, it has to be reported to the authorities. What are some of the physical ramifications of abuse that you might have to deal with as a counselor?
Well, certainly, Mike, if there is a suspicion or it has come out that there definitely has been molestation, definitely they should be brought for a physical examination because sometimes things occur. For instance, Mike, I've had instances where a mother has told us of a child that's experiencing bleeding, and it's very important to go to a doctor because you never know what kind of damage might have been done, and it's important that if there has been damage, that child can be treated properly.
Jeff, as you bring up the subject of them needing to have a physical, I'm just thinking in my mind all the different things, the legal ramifications, the family relationships, all the things that this child is going to have to go through in the beginning of this process unfolding. What's your responsibility as a counselor? How can you help them to get through that?
Well, like you've just said, Mike, in many cases, the courts are involved, and a child immediately faces many kinds of feelings, sometimes feelings of guilt. Let's say it's a father or a relative. They know that person's in trouble now, and they're all of a sudden in these court proceedings, and now they feel like they've done something wrong. Or if the perpetrator is sent to jail, sometimes they're dealing with fear. Is this man going to come out, and is this person going to be able to hurt me again? And you want to be honest with them, and you want to reassure them that there is a possibility of this person getting out at some point, but that they will be protected. And you want to help them to deal with all the different kinds of things that they're going to be facing, because there's going to be a lot of things they just don't understand, not being an adult.
I'm assuming there will be some kind of ongoing counseling. What are some of the things that you want to accomplish as you continue through this process with a child?
Well, initially, Mike, the counselor has to realize that this child's been damaged emotionally. They don't trust adults. You have to establish trust with that child if you're going to be able to help them. That's something you're going to have to diligently work for, and it's good to demonstrate love to that child. But if you want to give them a hug or something, it's good to ask them permission. You don't want to just quickly invade their space that now they've probably protected, but you do want to let them know that you love them, and you want to build that trust from the very beginning.
You know, children, as they're growing up, of course, one of the things that they're learning is respect for authority. And I'm assuming for these children, all respect for authority has been demolished. How do you balance that where you're trying to reestablish trust for authority, but also maintain that process of learning respect for authority?
Well, a wise counselor, Mike, will have a balance of love and authority. And a counseling, in any kind of counseling situation, the counselor has to be in control of that counseling session. And if that counselor allows that child to control things, they're never going to be able to help them. So there's a fine balance, but the child does need to understand that they do have an authority that they need to submit to. And if you're showing them love and you're gaining trust, establishing authority isn't going to be a problem, but it is something that the counselor needs to consider.
Jeff, why is it so important for this child to establish a respect for authority?
We want to help this child to deal with this situation the way God would want them to deal with it. We want to help them to deal with it biblically. If you establish an authority and there's an understanding that they're going to have to do things God's way, then you're going to be able to help them with the different issues that they're dealing with. Like, for instance, fear is probably one of the most common things that these children are dealing with, either with the idea that someone's going to harm them again, and they can even get obsessed with wondering if this is going to happen again, or is that person thinking something of me? They can actually become obsessed with themselves and just living in this fear. And we want to help them to see that preoccupation with themselves is not pleasing to God.
Well, even as you're saying that, I'm just seeing the huge difference between approaching a situation like this from a psychotherapeutic perspective and a biblical counseling perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I would say a psychotherapeutic way of dealing with that would be to focus on their emotions and to make it all about them, whereas we want to get them out of themselves. We want to get their eyes on their source of hope, which is in God.
Yeah, amen.
And looking at things through God's perspective.
That's got to throw a whole different perspective on the anger that these children must be experiencing very often.
Some counselors might tell them it's good to be angry. They might even encourage them to vent that anger, but a biblical view would teach them that anger is not pleasing to God, and we're going to want to help this child to deal with that anger in a biblical way, that it's not right to return evil for evil, and that forgiveness is the way to freedom. So it's very important that this child be taught to handle their feelings in a biblical way.
What about the feelings of guilt? You mentioned it a little bit earlier.
Well, there's two kinds of guilt, Mike. I guess we can say false and true guilt. And we want to make sure we have the wherewithal and the spiritual discernment to determine whether or not a child is truly experiencing a false guilt. In other words, feeling as though they did something wrong or it was their fault that this happened. That's obviously an example of false guilt. We want to help them understand that they were not the cause of the problem. But the other side of that could be where maybe God is convicting them of being angry, maybe at their mother because she didn't protect her, or even being angry at God for allowing this to happen to them. Well, that would be true guilt. That would be conviction, and we would want to help to alleviate that guilt by doing the right thing and doing the biblical thing, which would be forgiving mommy and realizing that it wasn't mommy's fault.
Jeff, we never know who may be listening to these programs, and there may very well be a young person out there that is dealing with having been molested, or there may be an adult out there who has never really dealt with past molestation. What word of encouragement might you have for those folks?
Well, Mike, what I would say to them is that God hasn't turned his eyes away from them, and he saw what happened to them, and it grieved his heart. We live in a fallen world, and bad things happen, but we serve a God that knows how to bring his purpose out of what even seemingly is to us a horrible thing. I've even heard my wife say, who went through her own issues because of my sexual sin towards her, say that if she hadn't gone through what she went through, she couldn't help the wives the way she does now. And God has a purpose. God has a plan, and he knows how to bring good out of what happened to you. And if you'll trust him and look to him for the answers, he knows how to heal your heart. But then you will also know how to bring that comfort to others. And I'm sure there's many others out there that need to know that there is a God of comfort that can heal any hurt that we have experienced. And I just want to encourage you, if you're listening, that God sees you and he knows you and he has a way out for you and he can bring good out of your situation.
Jeff Colón, thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike. It's been good being with you.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. You can address your comments via email to purityforlife@purelifeministries.org. That's purityforlife@purelifeministries.org. Or you can address your envelope to 14 School Street, Dry Ridge, Kentucky, 41035. That's 14 School Street, Dry Ridge, Kentucky, 41035. For Pure Life Ministries, I'm Mike Johnston. Thanks for listening.